3-week course of skilling up the communication between a senior officer and a junior officer. Who was that?
Was that Oxford?
Well, anyhow, it was one of the... They thought it should be sort of included in the curriculum, as it were.
And we do actually include our initial crew resource management training is...
Yeah, we have a non-technical skills now. They've moved away from the terminology of crew resource management to non-technical skills. When we induct a pilot into the company, they sit through a 2-day course. They're required to do that course every year as a recurrent training course. And when they go to the command seat of the aircraft, they're also required during our command training program to sit through a command non-technical skills course, which gives them the tools to address those type of issues.
It's part of a 5-day ground-based course before they actually commence their command upgrade training.
So, in terms of airline safety and pilot training, if the pilot in the left-hand seat had something go wrong, anything from a sickness or a sudden something made him incapacitated in flight, are you confident that, given the level of training you've got, that your first officer is up to the task?
Absolutely. In fact, not only are we confident, we practice that so that the first officers actually get to demonstrate their capability to land the aeroplane with an incapacitated captain. Not in the aircraft, I might admit, in the simulator.
It's part of our current training program. Pilot incapacitation.
Senator Xenophon.
Can I just go back to the issue of, well, in terms of fatigue, I think it's been alluded to by Senator Heffernan. You provided in the answers the question on notice that Virgin Blue utilises a multi-layered system of defence to proactively manage fatigue risk, and you've said that currently the biomathematical tools in use by the Virgin Blue group of airlines include the FADE program, developed by the University of South Australia, the Fatigue Avoidance Scheduling Tool FAST, also the system for aircraft fatigue evaluation SAFE from the UK. So you use a number of approaches. Are you the most appropriate person to ask about fatigue, Mr. Howell?
Well, actually, Stuart.
Yeah. Senator, we use all three of those programs to help us analyse both pre-duty and post-duty activity.
And that's for flight crew, not cabin crew, is that right?
No, it's for everyone. We deliberately include cabin crew in our fatigue risk management program.
Sure. So if CASA adopted a regulation applying to cabin crew for fatigue risk management, that wouldn't bother you?
I think it would. I think it would be absolutely appropriate.
Support that.
Yeah, if it was consistent. I don't know if you're familiar, Mr. Aggs, in terms of the Independent Transport Safety Regulator of New South Wales issued 2 transport safety alerts in the last few months. Transport Safety Alert number 34, 27th of July 2010, and also Transport Safety Alert number 35 of the 12th of January this year. And this was headed the use of biomathematical models in managing risks of human fatigue in the workplace, and applied to train operators.
Right.
Both reports were quite critical of the FADE system, saying that it wasn't, basically saying that it wasn't all-encompassing, that it was it had some failings, or wasn't as adequate as it could be. Are you familiar with, and again it would relate to the rail industry, but it does relate to those biomathematical models. Are you familiar with those alerts from the Independent Transport Safety Regulator?
Senator, I haven't seen those specifically, but there have been reports produced both by CASA and other bodies in recent years regarding the use of biomathematical models in general. And the general caution, that's the approach that Virgin Blue take, is that those models are to be used as a guide only, so they are part of the decision-making process and they provide information that is part of the way we analyse risk in the business, particularly fatigue risk. So we don't have a complete reliance on them. We use other methods as well.
And you referred to a US report that said that a FADE score of less than 80 does not mean necessarily that a person is not impaired by fatigue, and went on. So I just want to understand, do you have a scoring system based on FADE at Virgin?
We do, and perhaps I can get Rick Howell to comment on that.
In fact, Stuart Aggs and I were actually at our fatigue risk management governance meeting yesterday, and as we sometimes find that the interventions that we've actually taken to manage fatigue in our crew don't correlate directly with a high FADE score. And that's completely understood, and we've designed our process that way. The FADE score, or the score that you get from any of the biomathematical models, includes assumptions, lots of assumptions about the type of sleeper you are, and the fact that you'll actually get recuperative rest in the night hours, and other aspects. And the way that we actually manage that on a tactical level, so those people that actually may be fatigued regardless of the FADE score, we take the approach that if we can identify either before the crews see their roster or even after the crews see their roster that there is something that may be problematic for them, then they are encouraged to talk that over with their immediate line manager. We then make adjustments to the roster so that we'll break apart the things that actually potentially look fatiguing. If on the other hand we can identify those systemically early on. So one of the questions that was raised by Senator McGorran last time was regarding back-of-the-clock flying. We've actually rolled in several restrictions systemically to our rostering system that limits the way that we would build a roster that includes back-of-the-clock flying. So if we have the capability under the regulation and under our industrial agreements to fly a pilot from Bali to Melbourne and then back of the clock, or Perth to Melbourne back of the clock, and then
subsequently. So the purpose of the hand, so back of the clock is when you have a 10-hour break and then you're back on again.
Well, it's back of the clock is just referring to the fact that you're flying overnight, so when you would normally be asleep.
Yeah.
And so we've actually we've built restrictions into our rostering system that have, at some expense to us, that we can absolutely demonstrate where the impact of those restrictions has dropped the fatigue reporting level significantly. So we actually monitor the fatigue reports, and we also monitor the removals of crew due to fatigue, and we actually take systemic steps to manage that so that we don't see it occur.
Because I'm running out of time very quickly. Can you provide further details of that? That would be
certainly
be useful in terms of that.
Yeah.
And going back to the earlier question I asked you, Mr. Howell, if you put a cadet with 300 hours into the right seat, how do you plan to manage the risk?
We haven't actually, as you've heard, our cadet program is fresh at the moment, and so we haven't actually planned to that level of detail yet.
Right, so that will be something that
absolutely
in terms of risk management, it's pretty fundamental.
Yeah.
And finally, if there is in terms of reporting of incidents to the ATSB, particularly, is that normally done? What is the process in your airline? Does it normally go to management and then it goes off to the ATSB, or are there any repercussions to any extent whatsoever if a pilot, if a captain or co-pilot goes direct to the ATSB?
To answer that last question first, Senator, no, there aren't.
But how often does that happen, though, to your knowledge?
Look, very rarely. In the year 2010, the calendar year 2010, we had 1,000 reports go into the ATSB. We had out of 13,000 reports into our safety system total. Most of those, well, the majority of those, all of those reports came through my system, or the safety system, for transference to the ATSB. And I might note at this point that at the same time we notify the ATSB, we notify CASA. So CASA have complete transparency on any activity, on any reportable matter, but our primary point of contact for any of those incidents or occurrences is the ATSB.
Right. But if for some reason, normally you'd expect a pilot to tell the airline as well, because that's from a safety culture point of view.
Absolutely.
But if for some reason, for whatever reason, they went straight to the ATSB or CASA, you're saying that there would not be any repercussions for that pilot?
Absolutely not. We deal with safety of flight issues as a matter of fact. We take all the reporting on fact. We get reports or feedback from ATSB and CASA on a range of different issues, not necessarily related to our operations all the time, and we take everything on face value and we review it and respond accordingly.
And within a certain number of days, what's your general rule?
It depends on the level of occurrence. If something is a significant event that's been notified, then that may trigger an investigation at various levels. That can take anywhere from 24 to 48 hours to get an interim factual report, perhaps through to several weeks, maybe a month for a full report.
The fact that the ATSB sometimes takes 2 or 3 years to do a report, do you have any comment on that?
The ATSB, like all government agencies, have resource constraints. We have resource constraints too. I'm sure they'd like to do it faster.
Thank you.
Could I just go back to the question of fatigue management? Some people knock up quicker than others, and I just wondered how you assess that. I mean, some people go to sleep in front of the TV when they go back to the room, and or some people drink themselves to sleep at the bar. Some people have to get up all night and nurse the baby with the bellyache or whatever. How do you actually assess whether, despite the hours requirement, that the person is in a fit and proper condition to fly a plane? How do you know that I'm not a cocaine sniffer or an alcoholic? Do you breath test?
If we take the two issues slightly separate, Senator, we have a drug and alcohol management plan where we test all our safety-sensitive personnel on pre-employment, post-incident, so if they're involved in any particular incident, they'll be tested, and on suspicion. And so on suspicion is if they've been reported by anybody else in the organisation, as if we had, as you described them, a cocaine sniffer somewhere in our outfit, would probably be noticed one way or the other. Plus there are random testings that are...
So there is some sort of random...
You do random?
CASA conducts random at the moment, and Stuart, would you...
Well, I wonder if I can just make a comment on that, because one of the things that I got involved in very early when I started was, and we wrote to CASA, showing our keenness to introduce random testing on a more broad scale. But clearly that's not as simple as that to do, because there are all sorts of regulatory and work agreement issues to go through. But we've certainly expressed, and I personally have written to CASA, expressing our very strong interest in introducing a much more broad random scheme than even exists today.
It'd be fair enough, given the statistical evidence, that there'd be some people in every airline system that use drugs or drink too much grog, or, I'm in favour of random testing everyone that comes into this building, but I've got a lot of opponents, I have to say, but that doesn't imply that it means that anyone coming into this building we're saying that there'd be a drug taker, but I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Yeah, and just to that point, Chair, my comments in that letter were not specifically to operational personnel, but included management, senior management as well, so it was all in. So we'll just work through that and see where it goes.
Thank you very much. Further questions? Senator Cameron.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Borghetti, and thanks for the response to the questions on notice, and thanks for correcting my grammar, whoever did that. I'm a fitter, not an English teacher.
It wasn't
but that
me.
was very
English
good.
is a second language
That
to
was
me,
very
so it wasn't
good.
me.
Yeah.
I advise you that Senator O'Brien does have some questions too.
That's fine. I'll be as quick as I can. I've always been concerned, after the debate a few years ago about the establishment of a virtual airline in Australia. Mr Borghetti, you would have read the literature as I did, and I'm glad to see that you're not heading down that way. But maybe could you take this on notice, Mr Hawking, I think. Could you provide the total number of maintenance hours on all Virgin Blue aircraft undertaken in the last 12 months, the number of hours that have been undertaken overseas, the number of hours undertaken by contractors for Virgin Blue, and the number of hours undertaken by direct